Morning, everybody. It's me, Robert Phoenix. I am back for another edition of the Astro Weather for today, the 4th of January. And I am joined by none other than the Astro Cat himself, the great Jasper. How you doing, buddy? Huh? You ready to break it down? You ready to chop it up? Chop it up. Jasper had a bit of a bad tummy today. So let's get into it. We have some interesting things going on. And we have a great star of the day, an unusual one, not a quirk. Well, I guess to be kind of quirky. Not as quirky as Greta and Kyle, but quirky in some ways, but I think quite important. And someone who is thoroughly underused or as a resource. So we'll get into that, but let's get into the weather. Let's see what's going on here. Hope everybody's having a good morning wherever you are, or if you are arriving towards the end of your day, I hope that's a good one as well. That you've gotten as much out of the day as you possibly can. All right, let me get rid of my. Let me just get out of here for a second. Well, maybe not. I'll just drop this. All right, here we go. Up, up, and away. So we have the moon getting ready to move into position for a full moon. It is the first full moon of 2023. And we're, let's see, what is it? About a day and a half out from the exact opposition. So we'll have that big, bright Cancerian full moon, but the moon is separating now from Mars. We do have an inconjunct going on with Mercury. So trying to figure out how you feel and what you're going to say about how you feel is tricky. It's like trying to find, here I am. I'm demonstrating it. The sentence that eludes you in conversation. And the challenge is the moon in Gemini is bifurcated. So there's what about this? What about this? What about this? So our emotions are, they're on the hamster wheel a little bit. And with Mercury retrograde, there's a chance you might regret what you say on a day like this, especially with the lunar inconjunct with the moon, with Mercury rather. And this period kind of culminating over the next 24 hours, 36 hours. So think about what you're saying before you hit the email or you hit send on Twitter or whatever form of social media or personal communication you're using. If you're in a beef, especially if you're in a beef with either your mother or your siblings or family beef, think twice. Because the inconjunct, especially in speedy Gemini, is hasty. It's not tasty, but it's hasty. So you want to be able to, what is happening here? You want to be able to, I think, have better command over your emotional state. Unless, of course, you're just ready to kind of throw caution to the wind. On the other hand, you can be the recipient of that kind of interaction. So if somebody out of the blue just hits you with, this is what I'm feeling, right? How do you deal with that? How do you deal with, well, where did that come from? Just wait, right? Just wait for the moon to become full. Don't respond. And this is, I think, a pretty good practice in general. And I've actually learned this with social media, because when somebody posts something and all of a sudden your blood pressure rises, your breathing kind of accelerates, it feels like you're about to get into a fight, right? That is the fight or flight mechanism kicking in. And if you just wait for that to subside a little, and what's interesting is that we offer this programming about, well, at least men, I don't know about women, but men have this programming where it's like, if you don't do something, you're a fucking pussy. And right now with social media, especially with Mercury retrograde, Mars still retrograde, and we have this lunar inconjunct, that's not necessarily true, right? Restraint is almost always better now than jumping into the fray. Wait till Mars goes direct. If you want to jump into the fray, you want to sharpen your knives and get into the social media octagon, just wait. And I've been having to deal with this on my own Twitter feed. Like, oh my God, okay, what do I do here? How do I, untangle this knot, right? So, and even yesterday when we were dealing with the Damar Hamlin situation, some guy came out and said that he had vaxxed and boosted Damar Hamlin. Well, that turned out to be maybe not as true as it was. You're going to get people now trolling, right? Trolling social media events, or just trolling social media in general. So I always urge restraint, and you can actually respond better if you just wait. Just wait. Now, there are times where you do have to respond. You don't want to be conflict avoidant, but you also don't want to be conflict rabid. And with the moon in conjunct with Mercury, that's definitely going to be something you want to watch out for. Just wait a couple of days, wait for the moon to get full, right? All the emotions, everything will be on the table. And if you practice a little restraint here, you'll be the recipient of some better decision-making process. So the moon is separating right now from Mars, and we're moving away from that kind of caustic, intense, crisis-oriented energy from yesterday. And it was really interesting watching the sports media, football media, begin to get really frothy around the whole Damar Hamlin piece. You had Skip Bayless, who's a Sagittarius, and he had to do a show by himself yesterday because people were pissed off about his tweet, which was really, in a lot of ways, a very inconsequential tweet, but that's for another show. Venus started to, again, get a little more separation from Pluto. So some of that intensity of the Venus-Pluto conjunction, even out of sign, is beginning to get some space and some air. And then we have, and with that, in Venus in Aquarius, it helps practice a little detachment. So you don't have to take things so personally. And I think that's really the lesson of today. Just don't take things so personally. Wait at least 36 hours and then come in and deal with the emotional overflow in some ways, right? And I guarantee you, if you get into some kind of misunderstanding, and not of your own doing, somebody else's, you'll see that in 36 hours, if you practice some restraint, it'll be resolved. Or at least there'll be more information on the table so that the people that you've had a miscommunication with, or there was some misunderstanding, that it'll be much more tangible. Okay, I think that's really the biggest piece around today as we look at that lunar in conjunct with Mercury. Is there anything else that we really want to pay attention? Again, I think it's generally a good time, and just in terms of some of these sextiles, and clearly the sun moving into a stronger trine with Uranus, and even Mercury retrograde moving into that trine with Uranus. If you've got anything that's tech oriented that you need to deal with, you need to take care of, this is a really good transit for that. Uranus ruling tech, ruling things like even the internet, right? So if you want to get an upgrade, you want to do something that's going to enhance your ability to work efficiently, even if you don't want to spend a bunch of time online, this Mercury retrograde trine Uranus can help you, right? So if you have a computer that's been giving you a very difficult time, right, for whatever reason, it's shutting down, or you get the spinning rainbow wheel of death. Like, this is a time where, hey, I'm going to upgrade. I'm going to figure this out so that when I am online or I am having to interface with my computer, I can do so more efficiently. I don't have to sit around and wait and bang on the desk and wish I had a different kind of computer, or lament over the fact that you fucking hate technology. So technology's here. It's not going to go away. We all have to temper our use with it to a large extent. But I think the Mercury retrograde, especially as it slides back into that trine, that really tight trine with Uranus, could be a really good opportunity to look at what you're doing with some of the things in your life that are problematic, that are related to technology, or you're not being as efficient as you could be. Also, this extends into driving. I don't normally recommend buying a car on a Mercury retrograde. However, that said, if your car is a gas guzzler and you're trying to save more money and be more efficient on your commute or wherever you have to drive, this might be a good time to look at that. A lot of times at the beginning of the year, people are kind of ready, willing, and able to deal. And this is more on the private side because they want a clean house. I want to get rid of things. It's like, okay, I'm done with this car. I want to get something new. I want to upgrade. So this would be an interesting time, especially if your own vehicle is in a state of disrepair, or, again, we'll just transpose the computer problems with your car. You might even have computer problems in your car. So this is, normally I don't recommend getting a car during Mercury retrograde. Although in this instance, I think if you're looking to economize and have your vehicle become more efficient, this would be an interesting time. Also, again, if you want to explore things like an electric bike with a Mercury retrograde coming into trine Uranus, Mercury represents travel, of course. Uranus is something different. Some people say that electric bikes are more environmentally safe. Well, what's going to happen when everybody has a shit ton of electric bikes and all those little batteries fail? Because they will fail. Ultimately, you're going to get a new battery, right? So there's always a bit of a downside when it comes to technology. There's always a downside. It's just life, right? So maybe you want to get just a bicycle. Then there's a novel thought. But with Uranus, there is that technological aspect. Uranus, I think, one of the only planets now, the outer planet that's retrograde, if I'm not mistaken. Neptune's direct, Pluto's direct. And then Saturn, our friend Saturn, is direct. And let's see, we have Mars and Mercury and Uranus. I think Uranus is the next planet to go direct. All right, that is the Astro Weather for today. I hope that's been helpful. Why don't we talk a little bit about the star of the day? A very interesting and unusual star of the day. And so that means that there's somebody born on this day that is worth talking about. And there's a few people, but I thought that of all the people that really grabbed my attention the most, it is the birthday of Marie-Louise von Franz. And Marie-Louise von Franz was Carl Jung's personal secretary. So she starts off as a secretary. This is a complete Capricornian story, right? So she goes along, takes care of his letters, books his appointments, does all the things for Jung, who could be quite demanding, by the way. But then at a certain point, she decides that she's going to become a Jungian analyst, which is so Capricornian. She decides that she's going to have a second chapter in her life, maybe a third, because she has another chapter that's, pre-secretary to Carl Jung. And she becomes a very interesting addition to the world of Jungian practice and Jungian psychology. And one of her, I think, most groundbreaking and relevant works is it's a book. It's about that thing. It's not huge. It's called Puer Aeternus. And in Puer Aeternus, she talks about the eternal youth as it relates to men, right? Later on, we would know it as the Peter Pan syndrome, where men just refuse to grow up. And that seems to have been to this day, kind of a problem here in this country, in the United States. I can't speak for other countries because I don't live there, but I know it's problematic here. And what she did is she used the both the life and the story of the Little Prince, right, and the life of the author of the Little Prince, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, and it's a very interesting Jungian look at somebody who is terrified of commitment and busies himself with this idea that he's an artist when he's really more of an auteur, right? He kind of dabbles in art. He's a pilot. He flies around. He has a difficult relationship with his wife and his mother-in-law. So he flies a lot. He's like in the air a lot, right? He's not grounded. And she goes through his life and she talks about his life. And then she gets into the Little Prince, which is this fantasy of a boy who remains a youth forever on a distant planet with this kind of extraterrestrial guide. It's a really important work. And there's another piece in there that she also references, but it's the Little Prince work in the life of Exupéry, which I think is brilliant, really, really brilliant. So if you're interested in her, she has there's a lot of YouTube videos on Von Franz, and she's actually speaking, talking, and being interviewed, and some of them are quite good. And she talks about like the animus inside of feminism. So if you have any interest in Jungian psychology, do not sleep on her. She's a really interesting person. Now, I wanted to see what her relationship was like with Carl Jung. And that's what I want to look at. I want to look at her relation with Jung. Like, how did the two connect together? How was he instrumental in her life? So we only have a minute or two left, but let me get into it. Let me just do a quick synastry chart with her and Jung, because I think it's absolutely fascinating. So where is she up here? There she is. Boom. And let's bring in Jung, her boss and mentor, and then ultimately colleague. That's a very Capricornian ascent. Am I right? She starts off helping him out, and the next thing you know, it's a horizontal relationship. It's just a vertical relationship, and then it becomes a horizontal relationship. They become colleagues. It's really fascinating. All right, so let's take a quick look at their synastry chart, and you can see why and how he became just a significant influence on her life, and her on his life as well. I mean, it's not a one-way street here. And Jung was always surrounded by powerful women, whether it was his mother, whether it was his wife, whether it was Toni Wolff, whether it was Marie-Louise von Franz. So the first thing that really grabbed me when I saw this chart is the fact that Jung is a Leo sun and she is a Leo moon, and his son is right there in her ninth house. So he's her teacher, right? That's the role that the sun plays here, but it's not too far afield. It's not too far afield from this alchemical connection between the masculine and the feminine. And then when we look at the asteroids, we have Pallas, which is all about pattern recognition, which is a really, really big aspect when it comes to psychology. Like, she realized there was a pattern with Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. There was a pattern there that certain individuals represent this archetypal definition of whatever concept that, Von Franz or other Jungians, but in this case, Von Franz is really looking at. The other thing that's interesting, and she gets this from Jung, right? She understands this with Pallas, and they have a very intuitive relationship between the two. Not only that, but with the Uranus and Juno on her midheaven. Juno is all about the new thing, right? It's about starting fresh, something new, something different. And Jung is bringing that into her world. So she goes literally from being here, a third house person, right? A third house person, to ultimately being more of a 10th house and midheaven person. She does a lot of work with women. And so if you go onto her YouTube page, you'll see some really interesting videos. And then Uranus is that radical break, right? He's introducing radical ideas, something new, something kind of ahead of its time. and it changes her. And then ultimately, even with Ceres and Leo, I'm sure he nurtured her development from being his secretary to really one of the more articulate and informed Jungians on the planet at the time. So another aspect here that is quite interesting is the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction. So Jung's Saturn conjuncts her Jupiter. And so here we have this wonderful mesh of structure, order, and form and opportunity. They come together here, right? And Pluto, I'm sure Jung even challenged her. Jung was not an easy guy to be around. Nothing got past him. And sometimes, he had a bit of the tyrant in him. Like all great people have a streak of tyranny in them, right? It's just about how they manage it. Because in order to be really good at something, you kind of have to be an asshole at times. Super, super nice guys can be successful, or nice gals can be successful. But at the end of the day, the ones who are really super, super successful push the limit. And every now and then they have to piss somebody off. And Jung was not above that, right? So we have Pluto in her 7th house. So it's a relationship that will change her, right? That will transform her. And even the moon in Taurus conjunct her black moon Lilith. So there's going to be really interesting discussions and connections with the archetypal feminine. In this case, it would be the anima, right? It would be the anima for males and the animus for women. And this is where von Franz even looks at her own relationships and her own life through the lens of Jung. I think this is a fascinating chart. Neptune right on her descendant, and Jung had a Chiron Neptune conjunction in his chart. So he was not above being able to go into places that were risky, right? Like Jung, for his day and time, was he broke from Freud. He totally breaks from Freud, and Freud is a Taurus and Jung is a Leo. So they have that fixed square right between the two of them. Anyway, this is a really, really interesting chart. Jung's black moon Lilith is on her Venus. She's got Venus in Sagittarius. Jung has Mars in Sagittarius. So even though they're not conjunct, they get the masculine and feminine working together. And look at Jung's Venus and Mercury conjunction right here. And what's it doing? It's opposing her Mercury, her Mars, her Sun in the 3rd house. So Jung is essentially getting her to elevate right from the 3rd house, which is kind of, taking care of details in some ways, communications, and she's always going to be a 3rd house person, but he's getting her to come up to the 9th house to see a bigger picture. And in Cancer, it's nurturing, right? It's kind of nurture. Like, let me nurture your ascent. Let me nurture the potential of your higher mind. And even with the true node here, conjunct her 6th house, which is work, he's going to play a role. He's going to impact her on a day-to-day level, right? Because that's the 6th house. And ultimately, she becomes this Capricorn who literally climbs the mountain. And I love this. I love how the synastry works in the chart of both these people. And then even Jupiter here forming a grand trine, right? His Jupiter connects in with her Jupiter connects in with her Pluto, Saturn. Again, very powerful. Saturn, the ruler of Capricorn, Pluto, the transformation, right? The transformation of the relationship between authority and hierarchy. This is what happens in our life. So, people talk about, whoa, my God, this woman is so great. She's such a fantastic example or, image for other women to emulate, whoever that woman is, right? But rarely does Marie-Louise von Franz come into that conversation. And if there is a woman who I think is worthy of that conversation, it's her. Not only because of her own personal journey from being a personal assistant and secretary to Jung to becoming one of the foremost Jungians of her day. That's important. That's a really important thing. But it's also the work and the work that she has done in relationship to women, because that was a big part of her work. All right. That's it. Thanks for being here today. And we're going to be going over to 15 minutes of flame at 9:11 a.m. Let me show you that. That's the graphic. This is the thing that I got to do every day. By the way, if you like this, hit like, hit share, all that stuff that I'm supposed to tell you how to do and what to do when we do these live things. There it is, 15 minutes of flame. Take note that it's of flame. Looks like there was a problem this morning. I don't know. Looks like I'm streaming live. Am I right? Am I right here? Anyway, 15 minutes of flame. Let me get out of the stop share. Let me go back in here and see where we are. Yep. Okay. We're good. We're good. Thanks, everybody. Use your head in order to discern what's real. Your heart said what's possible. Take good care. Come over. Come join us. 9/11 over on my own website and channel. Take good care and bye for now.